Hi, and welcome back to our weekly class. Today, we are going to be going over the gut-brain connection and what it actually means. Now, if you know anything about the gut-brain connection or the gut-brain axis, this is something that is really important to all of us because not only are we going to learn about how our digestive system works, but we're also going to be learning about the connection between how the digestion, our intestinal tract, and everything that we feel inside of our gut after we eat, how that's going to be impacting our overall happiness, connecting our brain to our gut through something what we call the gut brain axis. This not only impacts your overall life, your overall happiness, but also your general well-being and how you can perform as an elite athlete, elite performer, entrepreneur, as well as a business owner. So if this is something of value to you, and if this is a topic that you're interested in, make sure you listen up, pay attention, and take lots of notes because we'll be going through some really cool and interesting information tonight. Now, let's have a look, first of all, at what our digestive system does. Now, what is the role of the digestive system? It is to break down food to be able to create nutrients so that we can assimilate them to create new nutrients for our body and what our body needs. That's the first role. In our previous class, we did go through a little bit of the digestive system when we talked about detoxification. We will be going a little bit more in depth as to what are the processes of the digestive system, what is the role, what it's meant to be doing, and how it does it, okay, and how it's going to affect our overall health. Second role is to eliminate. So we need our digestive system for elimination to remove anything that we don't want, toxins, waste, things of that nature. And the final role is for it to produce hormones. And as we will learn over the course of tonight's class, hormones are so important for our overall well-being, our happiness, especially, and that feeling of vitality and energy for you to attack your day and all the tasks that you want to handle. Okay. So let's have a look with our digestive system, what starts our digestion. Now, there are lots of different things that kickstart the digestion. A lot of people will probably know the first one, sight and smell. So when you see food or when you smell something that smells incredible coming out of the kitchen, you might start to get that salivating feeling. You might start to feel like you're getting a little bit hungry. And those senses are what first stimulates our digestion. Okay. So the first sign that you are hungry, that's usually when you start looking for food. So whether that is through smelling something and you start to think, where is that smell coming from? Where is that delicious roast chicken smell coming from? Because I'm hungry. That is the first sign that you're hungry, is when you're looking for food. But this smell actually also helps us to start salivating, which will start the process of digestion. So saliva is very, very important to help us break down the food that we eat so that the work in the digestive tract when the food comes down to our stomach is a lot less. So we want to start the work in our mouths and lessen the load when it gets to the stomach. And I'll explain a little bit about how this works, okay? So this sensory aspect of digestion prepares our digestive system for what it needs to do. So if we are feeling very disconnected from our food and we're not looking at the meal that we're eating and taking time to appreciate the food that we're about to consume, if we're not connected with it, we can actually make it harder for our gut to digest it later on once we consume it. The next thing is, of course, saliva and chewing. So we need to chew on our food and start the work. Like I said, we need to initiate the process in the mouth so that we can lessen the work in the gut. Okay, and we do that through saliva and chewing. So our actual digestive system needs our chewing to happen. It doesn't occur if we're just swallowing the food. I don't know whether you've noticed this, but in the times where you have swallowed your foods very quickly, you may have ended up getting some side effects of, say, bloating or maybe acid reflux. Those are some symptoms and side effects of not chewing properly and that's not starting the process of digestion through our mouths. Okay. So chewing is part of that digestive system process. It doesn't just happen in the gut and the stomach. It actually starts in the mouth with our salivary glands, with the chewing of the motion of our mouths and our muscles in our mouths, and then finally going down into our stomach. Now, one other thing that's really quite interesting is also the manual preparation of your food. So when we are preparing our foods, whether it's putting something together or putting in the oven or the actual cooking process, that can help us get more involved and more connected with our food and can actually begin the processes of digestion more efficiently. So if you're, say, bringing a salad to work, I encourage you to bring your dressing and your salt and pepper to work and then get that kind of prepared at work before you start eating it. So that there is that initial process of digestion when you're about to eat. Apart from the time that you're cooking it. So let's say you cook it on a Sunday and you're bringing the meal to work on a Monday, actually preparing it and manually putting it together on the Monday can help to initiate that process for you as well. Okay. Now, let's have a look at what actually helps with this digestive system. And all this is going to make a lot more sense as we get into how this is all relevant to the gut brain axis or what we call the gut brain connection. Okay. So these are the enzymes. Just very quickly, enzymes are the Pac-Man in our body that consume and help to break down the food that we eat. So I like to see them as Pac-Man. They are released in our body as soon as we consume carbohydrates, proteins, fats, all these macronutrients. Okay, so enzymes in our body end with ASE. As you can see, you got amylase, protease, and lipase. Each of these enzymes have a different role. So the first one, amylase, this actually breaks down carbs. So when we are consuming carbohydrates, our saliva will secrete amylase to help us begin the process of breaking down carbs. And one of the side effects, like I mentioned, is if we are not chewing and mixing our food with the saliva, this can lead to fermentation. And this is what actually causes acid reflux and bloating at a later stage. So make sure that you are, not talking as you're eating. You are actually taking time to chew that food and to mix that food up with your saliva. Your broths, stews, smoothies, things like that. Obviously, some of those have carbs. This will also be mixed with the saliva when we are, I guess, drinking them to break down the carbs. Okay. Second enzyme is your protease. Protease is an enzyme that breaks down protein for our body to absorb. And the last one, lipase, is what our body produces to break down fat. Okay, so the word lipase comes from the word lipid, which you might have heard before or seen in different articles and things like that. Lipid is fat. All right. So, our digestion, like I said, actually begins in the mouth. So, it doesn't start from the stomach, which a lot of people tend to think. When we eat carbohydrates, we actually secrete amylase through our saliva and it mixes with the carbohydrates. Okay, so these carbohydrates will then go down the esophagus. So, if you have a look at the diagram here, you've got that red thing coming down through the throat, into the lungs. It'll go through your esophagus, and your carbs will actually become a bolus. It becomes a ball, which is what is called a bolus, and it'll go down the esophagus and land in the stomach. Now, in your stomach, this is where a lot of the work starts to happen. This is really the second step of your digestive process, where much of the load takes place in your stomach. Your stomach is kind of in this instance like a washing machine, and it mixes the bolus all your stomach acids. You've got bile because your gallbladder is going to secrete bile to help to digest any fat that we eat. Stomach acid, like your hydrochloric acid, will help to break down and emulsify all these components, and all of it will be mixed and churned into smaller particles so that it can then be transported through our different organs for absorption. And it goes down the intestines, when it gets absorbed into the bloodstream, and this is where we get the energy from, and this is where we get the building blocks such as the protein for when you're working out and tearing your muscle fibers in order for you to get strong and to recover. That's how your food is being transported into your muscles. Okay, your stomach actually does a lot of the work. So, going back to the initial processes of the digestive tract, and the digestive process is one of the consequences of not chewing properly through your mouth and, like, say, scoffing down or rushing through your meal is you tend to do more work later on in the digestive tract. So that tends to lead to slow, sluggish feelings because your digestive tract is working so much harder. This not only affects obviously how you feel, you might get like really bloated and uncomfortable, but it also affects your energy expenditure because I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes when I've eaten a lot and eaten way too much, I've overloaded my gut, or in the instance where I have rushed through my meal and eaten way too fast. I don't know if you've noticed this yourself, but I find that when I do that, I get really, really tired after the meal. You know, we call them food coma, right? You feel like you need a nap, you feel extremely sluggish. This means, or rather, this happens because there is a lot more blood and energy that's moving into your gut and away from the brain, away from our limbs, for example, because the gut needs that energy to digest the food. Okay, so this is one of the side effects that's not great for us of not properly chewing and digesting it prior in the mouth through proper slow chewing. So, one of the things that we like to encourage you to do is just be a little bit more mindful. If you're someone who suffers from a lot of gut issues and you often feel like your digestion is slow, or you might feel that you're always bloated, then, it's not just about what foods you eat, but it's also how you're eating it. Okay. Um, Now, one of the reasons why we might have lesser energy is also because when we are trying to digest a whole lot of food in our stomach, a lot of the blood moves from our brain into our trunk to work on that. So, like I said, it's really about what you're eating and how you're eating it. You can't just be sitting at your computer through a work email trying to scoff down your meal and expect that your body's going to be okay and digest the food just like that. All right. So now that we know how the digestive system kind of works and what the processes are that involves from the mouth down the esophagus into the stomach and then transport it out into our muscle cells, we want to also now talk about the two nervous systems that live in our body. Now, this one here is very, very important. You might have read this somewhere already. Obviously, over the last 2, 3 decades, there's been a lot of focus on the parasympathetic nervous system and trying to activate that more as we are living in a modern world full of modern day stresses. We need to focus a lot more in nurturing that parasympathetic nervous system because majority of us are living in that sympathetic nervous system. And let me explain what these two is. Can be quite confusing when you're looking at all those words, but really it's a very simple two-way system that works to give us that equilibrium, that balance in life. Okay. Now, at the kickoff, if you were with us at the kickoff, you may have remembered that Annabella took us through an amazing box breathing technique, right? So let me explain a little bit about this box breathing technique and how it's relevant to what I'm talking about tonight on our nervous systems. So the parasympathetic nervous system is one of two of our nervous systems. We have two nervous systems. One is para, one is sympathetic, okay? The parasympathetic nervous system is also called our rest and digest system. This means that we need to activate this when we're trying to rest and recover and when we're trying to digest food. So, the opposite of that is when you are stressed out and when you're in that fight or flight mode. Someone has just scared you, or you're getting ready to fight, or you're so stressed out that you shut down and you're ready to escape the situation that you're in. That is the complete opposite of para. That is your sympathetic nervous system. And that is the opposite of when you are resting and digesting. So you can imagine in the modern world with people going through so many stresses in life and trying to digest food and rest at night whilst activated in the sympathetic nervous system. You can see how they are very contradicting and will be working against each other. Not a very easy thing to ask of your body to do for you, right? So what we want to do is we want to remember what Annabella shared with us at kickoff, which is the box breathing technique. 4 breaths in, 4 second hold, 4 breaths out. So 4 second breath out, and then another 4 second hold, and then you just repeat. So 4 seconds in, you're going to hold for 4 seconds at the top. Then you're going to go out for 4 seconds, hold it again for four, and then back in again, hold it, back out, hold it, and repeat for 3 to 4 times. As you do this, what's actually happening is this deep breathing technique will activate our rest and digest system by massaging this thing called the vagus nerve. Okay, now your vagus nerve is very important for our nervous system. The vagus nerve actually helps us in a lot of ways. It carries a huge range of signals from our digestive system and organs to the brain, and then vice versa. So it's kind of like an information highway. It is the 10th cranial nerve, and it extends from its origin in the brainstem right down to the neck, the thorax, and then down to the abdomen. So you can imagine it traveling all the way down, sending information and messages and signals, and then back up and down. So if you are completely in that sympathetic nervous system mode, which is fight or flight, stress with work, you've just had an argument with someone and you are heightened and you're very tense, in order for you to activate the para and get out of the sympathetic nervous system, the quickest way is to activate it by massaging the vagus nerve by doing your box breathing technique. Okay, so those are some really quick, applicable, and effective ways you can try to get away from that sympathetic nervous system and get into that sympathetic nervous system. Okay, now the thing about the sympathetic nervous system is that it is not necessarily negative. It is there to protect us. It is actually very important because we need that fight or flight response to keep us out of danger. This is a nervous system that will kick in when we need to run away from something dangerous, when we need to protect ourselves and defend ourselves from something dangerous. And it's going to kick in that nervous system by activating the adrenaline. It's gonna pump adrenaline into our bodies. It's gonna give us that clear mind to act in that moment on what you need to do rather than staying completely relaxed and going very cruisy and thinking la 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 la. So if someone's attacking you or about to attack you, do you want to be able to protect yourself and act and run away? Or do you want to be kind of relaxed and looking at your attacker thinking, yeah, sure, attack me? Obviously not, right? So the sympathetic nervous system might sound like it's a negative thing, but it's actually really important for us. We need to have both. The problem with modern day and a lot of how we live our lives is we are constantly in that sympathetic nervous system and not enough in the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so just to give you guys context for those Two, we need to have both. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. We just need to be able to stay away from the sympathetic nervous system when we're supposed to be resting, like at night when we're sleeping, like after a workout when we're trying to recover, when we're about to eat and activate that digestion. We need to be able to be in that parasympathetic so that we can work the digestive system efficiently without any of the side effects like bloating, constipation, feeling very tense, or having acid reflux, any of those symptoms. So if you're constantly living in that sympathetic nervous system, you'll find that you are always in that fight or flight. You might suffer from anxiety, quite nervous or tense all the time. This actually reduces our enzyme production, which will then affect our digestion, obviously, because it will affect your amylase, your protease, your lipase production. Um, and then obviously with the chronic stress, that can very much lead to bloating and constipation, as it's going to affect our digestive system. Okay. So this is a great little breakdown of how our nervous systems work and how it affects our digestive system, which brings me to the next point of why and how there is a gut brain axis, the gut brain connection. The gut brain connection is so important. What is it? Why is this important? How is this relevant to you? Now, the two nervous systems are extremely important and relevant to our gut and our brain because they regulate our digestive process, right? So, as I've just mentioned, a lot of this nervous system and where you are living, whether it's parasympathetic or sympathetic, they will determine how your digestive process is regulated. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is what we call the rest and digest, like I've just shared. Um, it helps to promote digestion. It stimulates our saliva production. It stimulates our gastric juice secretion. It helps to activate our vagus nerve, like I said. And the vagus nerve is, as I mentioned earlier, it's like your main information highway. It's the sort of information track that sends signals and sends messages from your brain down to your thorax, down to your abdomen. Okay, so activating the vagus nerve through breathing techniques and breath work and meditation is a major player in this gut brain connection because that's basically the main driver. Now, when your parasympathetic nervous system is strong and is dominant and you're living in that space and that state, your body is in a complete relaxed state, which supports really good nutrient absorption. It will help your digestion be a little bit more efficient, which means that you are actually assimilating all the nutrients that you're breaking down and trying to take in. It will help with enzyme secretion. It will help with the repair of your gut lining as well. So, right now, as I'm sharing this class with you and I'm trying to explain all of this, there's a little bit of adrenaline going on with me. I'm thinking about what I need to say. I am not in my parasympathetic nervous system right now. I am in my sympathetic nervous system. So I need to be in that heightened state a little bit so that I can present well with affirmations, with authority. And so, like I said earlier, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad if you're in that sympathetic nervous system. You just need to be able to regulate it and to be able to manage it a little bit based on your circumstances. When it's time to sleep tonight, I would hope that I'm not in that sympathetic nervous system and I start to slow down and tap into that parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. Your sympathetic nervous system, on the other hand, is your fight or flight system. If you're constantly in that chronic fight or flight mode, this is going to help. This is not going to help your digestion. Sorry. This is going to suppress it. It's going to cause inflammation. It's going to cause leaky gut. When you activate this sympathetic nervous system, you actually divert blood away from the gut into your muscles and your brain. So, like I said, right now I'm talking, I'm moving, my brain's working, I'm directing blood away from my gut. So, if I have just had a very heavy meal, say 15 minutes before this, I would be slowing down my digestion right now, which is obviously not ideal. So thankfully I didn't eat before this. Um, but those are some of the effects of being in that sympathetic nervous system. Okay, it will lead to constipation and indigestion and chronic stress states. So something that you want to take note of and pay attention to if you are someone who suffers quite often from these symptoms. All right. So the gut brain axis is really the communication between your central nervous system, which is our brain, and the enteric nervous system, which is our gut. So there's a lot of technical terms there, but all you really got to know it's the connection that sends the communication um, between your brain and your gut, and vice versa. All right. So we want to make sure that we are trying to massage that vagus nerve, as it's the thing that's going to help us tap into the parasympathetic nervous system. This is going to help allow our brains to influence the function of our gut. Um, and it's going to take us away from stress. It's going to take us away from anxiety. It's going to reduce the effects of overtraining. When you dysregulate this communication between the gut and the brain, you are going to dysregulate the balance of our microbiome. So things like our gut flora, that's going to be impacted. Same way as when you consume antibiotics, that's also going to dysregulate the balance of your microbiome. Um, it's going to disrupt our gut motility. Our gut motility refers to how the muscles in our digestive tract and our stomach move. So the muscles are obviously moving to um, get the particles broken down so that we can absorb them. So when the um, sympathetic nervous system is constantly activated, our gut motility will be affected. Our neurotransmitter production will also be heavily affected, which I will touch on in the coming slides. But our neurotransmitter production is very, very important. And this will explain a lot about why, when you are bloated, you are unhappy. Okay, because neurotransmitters are actually our chemical messengers. Um, and chemical messengers, for example, are like your serotonin. So, serotonin is mostly produced in the gut. And you may have heard that serotonin is our happy hormone. So, serotonin acts as both a neurotransmitter as well as a hormone. It's produced in the gut and it's our happy hormone. So, you can imagine how happy you are when you're constantly bloated, constantly having acid reflux, constantly needing to put a heat pack on you or take my Lanta after a meal when you don't feel like you're digesting the food well. If you suffer from these symptoms, I highly, highly recommend that you look at things that will help you improve staying in that parasympathetic nervous system phase and activating that phase as opposed to living in that sympathetic nervous system phase. Okay. We want to make sure that we are not suppressing the digestion and risking being in a state of inflammation and even leaky gut. What we call leaky gut is actually your intestinal permeability. So if there are gaps in your gut lining, that is what we call leaky gut. This is not good because when we consume foods that are toxic and things that are processed that may not be good for you, processed junk food, things of that nature, seed oils, industrial seed oils, like I mentioned when I talked to you guys about detoxification. If we are suffering from leaky gut, any of these foods that we consume will permeate that gut lining even more, get through the gaps, and cause severe toxicity and pain. And that's going to show up through symptoms like vomiting and having Crohn's disease and things of that nature. So, something that we definitely want to stay away from. um, by trying to control that chronic stress level that we are kind of a lot of us are suffering from. Okay, so you will look at things like nutrient absorption that's going to be impaired if you are constantly in chronic stress. You can trigger immune responses like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. You can also disrupt your mental health. If you are not producing enough serotonin, you might start to feel more, get more into that depressive state. All of these are extremely common, and what people don't realize are completely controllable through lifestyle and diet. How you eat, what you eat, how you're living your life, whether you're in a state of stress or relaxation. Okay, so if you suffer from these autoimmune responses and autoimmune diseases, this is definitely something that you want to pay attention to and start to activate more of that parasympathetic nervous system. Now, let's move on to how these actually impact us and our hormones. So there are three main hormones, one of which I've already touched on, the serotonin, and how it impacts our gut. Okay. So we have tryptophan as the first one. Tryptophan is a hormone, or rather, an amino acid that turns into serotonin, a hormone, when you combine it with the right things. So, when you're eating things that are high in iron, high in magnesium, or if you're supplementing with calcium, with zinc, these nutrients, when combined with tryptophan, will turn your amino acid into a serotonin. Serotonin, like I said earlier, is a really important hormone that is produced in the gut. It is what makes us happy. Okay. Um, you want to focus on serotonin because 80 to 90% of serotonin is actually produced in our gut. So if we're constantly experiencing digestive issues, bloated, not overeating, not feeling good, or eating the wrong things that are triggering us, then our capacity to produce serotonin is going to be highly, highly impacted in a negative way. So we want to make sure that this is something that we focus on, because if your gut's not happy, then you are not going to be happy. And if you're not happy, chances are your gut isn't happy because of that two-way communication highway between your brain and your gut. So if you are cramping, gastro, bloating, all of these will impact your serotonin levels. Now, melatonin is the last hormone. Melatonin is actually converted from serotonin. Melatonin is also another hormone that's super important. It's our sleep hormone that helps us drift off to sleep. Another way that you can produce or increase the production of your melatonin is to get out in the morning at the start of your day to get some sunshine. If you get some vitamin D exposure, that's going to help boost your melatonin production. Staring at screens all day, like what I'm doing right now on your phones, that is going to diminish your melatonin production. So if you're using screens a lot, whether it's for work or for leisure, I highly recommend you guys get some blue light glasses that's going to help block um, the blue light, and it will appear very orange. So you don't need to wear it out during the day when you're outdoors. But if you're staring at the TV, the iPad, the computer screen, your phone screen, then definitely get some blue light blocking glasses. Everything will start to look very orange, but it will help with your circadian rhythm. It will help with your melatonin production, and eventually will help you sleep, which of course leads back to being in that parasympathetic nervous system. Because if you're getting crappy sleep, you're probably not a very happy person. If you're not a very happy person, you're probably also not having a very happy gut. So it's all linked, okay, guys? You'll learn across our challenge and across programs that we run here at Change Labs is that everything that we do has a flow-on effect to the next thing and to the next thing, whether it's our gut or our energy in the gym or the way we digest our food or how fast we're running on the treadmill or even how well we conduct ourselves with authority and clarity when you're running a business meeting, everything leads back to one another. And when you fix one thing, you start to see a flow-on effect in other areas, which should hopefully encourage you to keep working on all those other areas as well, which is pretty cool. All right. Now, one of the pretty cool things about melatonin is you've probably seen that in a pill form or like a melatonin spray that you can topically spray in your skin. Melatonin is actually about nearly half of melatonin is produced in the gut. So you can take as much supplements and spray as much as you want. If you're not having a happy gut, it is going to impact your sleep in a very negative way. Okay, so we need to focus on these hormones, look at ways and how we can increase our tryptophan and convert that into serotonin. So making sure that you have good amounts of magnesium, zinc, iron, whether it's through supplements or food. We want to make sure that we are increasing the serotonin in our bodies through working on that digestive process that I just shared with you guys. And then finally, looking at melatonin, making sure that we are giving ourselves that good boost in the morning by exposing ourselves and our eyes to sunshine and vitamin D, especially for those of us who live in a very gloomy, very dark kind of city. If you don't get much sunshine and sunlight, definitely get out there when you can, whether it's just going for a walk during the day when the sun is out, um, because you're going to need that to feel happy. Okay. Alrighty. So, these are some really quick and effective ways that I have come up for you guys to heal your gut. Because at the end of the day, the bottom line is this: if our gut is not happy and is not functioning at the efficient level that we need it to, we are not going to be able to feel that well-being and happiness that we want, which will then lead on to how we show up at work, how we show up in our family, how we are treating our loved ones, right? If you're not happy, can you imagine how frustrating it can be when you're trying to work through challenges? It will be so much harder. So this is really some steps in a four-step process to help you start focusing a little bit more on how you can heal your gut, okay? Step one is the elimination phase. So we always want to get rid of the things that we're not supposed to have in our bodies. We talked a lot about this in the detoxification class. A lot of the detoxing process starts with eliminating crap that we shouldn't be eating, right? So getting rid of your junk food. As you guys should know what foods you're meant to be eating. This is one thing that we want to start to remove all the gut irritating foods that you're consuming, processed junk food, sugar, grains, gluten, legumes. These are the biggest offenders for irritating our gut and causing leaky gut syndrome. We want to make sure that we eliminate these, remove them so that our bodies can start to rebalance the microbiome um, and reduce that inflammation that we are experiencing. The seed oils also are in your foods that you want to eliminate. So your takeaway, your junk food all have seed oils. Your McDonald's fries, those are deep fried in seed oils. Those are all the things that we want to get rid of to try and reduce the inflammation load on the system. Tap water is also something that I highly recommend you start to eliminate. It contains a lot of chemicals that we don't need, artificial chemicals, man-made manufactured chemicals and toxins that come through the factory waste, comes through the rust in our piping. So you've got things like chlorine to copper to um, poisons, a lot of poisonous things, fluoride that we don't need to be consuming on huge amounts day in and day out for our entire lives. Highly recommend you get a great, well recognized, good quality filter or you can also order some water that has been remineralized and filtered to your house. This is something that is very underrated that I highly recommend. It is worth it. It's the way I see it, it's not really an expense, it is an investment. Okay. And then, of course, the last thing that we want to eliminate is chronic stress as much as we can anyway. And I will run you guys through a few tips on how to remove chronic stress. Box breathing is a great way you can start to diminish that stress as soon as you start to feel yourself getting that shortness of breath, highly anxious, you start to feel really hot, your body temperature goes up. Try to get yourself into that box breathing pattern. Do 6 to 8 of those, and you start to massage your vagus nerve and get you towards that parasympathetic nervous system state. Step two of healing our gut, we want to repair the gut lining once we eliminate all the junk that we are not supposed to have. Um, our gut cells actually have an extremely high turnover rate, which means that our gut cells are completely replaced every 4 to 5 days. So if you are constantly suffering from gut issues, your gut is not doing that to you. You are doing that to you. If you're suffering from gut issues daily, then you are just slowly poisoning yourself and causing pain through less than ideal dietary preferences. Okay, your gut cells have a great turnover rate, they replenish themselves every 4 to 5 days, so you need to nourish them daily. For example, bone broth is a great example on how we can nurture the gut. Cooking your own bone broth is very simple. You can get some chicken necks, boil them in some filtered water, add some ginger, onion, garlic, carrots, and just let it come to boil and then simmer, and you've got yourself a beautiful pot of bone broth. You can also use beef bones, lamb bones, fish bones, any bones you really want. Or if that sounds like too much effort, then it really isn't. But if that sounds like too much effort for those of you who don't like to cook, then you can go and get a jar of bone broth from even Woolies sell them now. One of my favorites is, I think it's called Best of the Bone. They have several different flavors. It is extremely clean, very tasty. There's no additives, nothing bad added to it. Something that can be easily consumed just by adding a cup of water, a teaspoon of the bone broth, into a cup of water, and you got yourself a cup of bone broth. And you can have this throughout the day, whether it's with your dinner or maybe in the afternoon as a bit of a snack between your lunch and dinner. That can be quite nice for you as well. Adding collagen is a great way to repair the gut lining. It's been said through a lot of research that collagen and L-glutamine have really great repairing effects for our gut. Couple that with the bone broth, and you'll be getting yourself this elixir of gut lining repair. So a lot of that collagen also comes from your bones. If you are getting bones that still have the um, like the joints that's kind of still connected to it, there's actually a lot of collagen in those as well, which is where you can get that amount of collagen from without buying, an additional supplement to add to your foods. I personally like to add collagen into my coffees. I have that in the morning with my coffee. I just stir it up in my hot beverage. I drink it, and that's my collagen for the day. And then in the afternoon, I have my bone broth. Steak is great for protein as well as zinc. This is great for repairing the gut lining. So previously I mentioned that tryptophan, when combined with the right ingredients such as zinc and B vitamins, can be really effective in converting into serotonin. Steak is a great way you can repair the gut. Unfortunately, the media and mainstream news has really shed a negative light on steak and painted it out to be something that's quite damaging for our bodies, causing cancer and things like that. And I just want to share that if you are getting really terrible quality beef, then sure, it has those effects. If you are getting hormone filled beef that is sourced from very poor sources and poor quality, such as a burger patty from McDonald's, that kind of beef is not going to be the same as a porterhouse or rump steak that you get at the supermarket or a restaurant. Okay, so when you're looking at steak and beef, just make sure you're getting the right kinds of beef, because a lot of the beef that we see is actually the one that's demonizing beef. So what we see out in like restaurants, junk food restaurants is what I mean. That's what the mainstream media should be talking about, not the steaks that we get. Like an organic piece of grass-fed steak is so good for you and great for repairing our gut. And then, of course, we have sea salt as well. Sea salt is really effective for getting that stomach acid production, which will help you to improve the speed of your digestion and the efficiency of your digestion. So if you often find that you tend to get indigestion, so you feel that acid reflux, majority of the time, it doesn't mean that you have too much acid. It actually means you have too little hydrochloric acid that is causing that slowed down digestion. Okay, so the sea salt here, really good high quality sea salt will be able to help you produce more stomach acid, which will then eliminate the problems of having acid reflux and having the need to get into that Mylanta because of heartburn. All right. Looking at step three, we want to move our gut and our body. So our gut and our body is something that is obviously working hand in hand. Um, if you are not moving your body at all, it's very hard for your gut to get moving too. So, of course, we want to have daily bowel movement if we can control it, but you can also have long walks to help aid in that. So it kind of goes hand in hand. It's like that cycle that one can't have what you can't have one without the other. All right. Raw carrot salads with apple cider vinegar is also quite handy for your gut health. So you can shred some carrots and then add some apple cider vinegar to it. If that's too sour, you can put a tiny bit of honey over it. That's a great little trick to improve your gut and to help it move along a little bit better. And then, of course, like I already mentioned, salt for acid production. Last but not least, we have step four of healing your gut. This is the most important one of all. Yes, we already know we need to eat well, but sometimes picking the right foods is a lot harder than trying to calm your nervous system. So let's focus on the big bang for buck stuff. If you are someone who is still at the start or in the middle of your journey where you're still falling into bad old habits of snacking on junk and things like that, don't worry. As long as you are making some changes, you are on the path to getting that transformation that you're after. Okay. Whilst we're working on that, this step four is a much easier one for you to tick off and to be able to hold yourself accountable in making these changes. So we want to heal our gut. We need to calm our nervous system. A nervous mind usually leads to a poor gut. So, focusing on meditation, whether it's 2 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, start with something. You can use guided meditations if you can't meditate on your own. There's a lot of really effective and easy to download ones on Spotify, also on YouTube, guided meditations for even just 1 to 3 minutes to begin with. Every day can help you just calm your nervous system and calm your mind. Of course, box breathing, which I have mentioned multiple times, along with Annabella. This is extremely helpful for those moments where your mind starts to drift off and think about something that is traumatic or stressful, a deadline at work or a difficult conversation you're about to have with someone that you don't want to have a conversation with. Box breathing in those moments can instinctively and immediately massage your vagus nerve and take you out of that nerve nervous state, and move you into that relaxed state so that you can be activating your rest and digest system. Okay. And then finally, doing all those things that I mentioned with your melatonin, blocking the blue light so that you can sleep, because this is ultimately so critical for our gut health. Sleep is extremely underrated. If you want to put on muscle, if you want to burn fat, if you want to be happy, if you want to have good digestion, it all comes down to how well you are sleeping, how much you are sleeping. So, getting all those things in line, getting your ducks in a row to make sure that you get those 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night is going to create the biggest impact on your overall nervous system. All right. So, to summarize this for you guys, because this has been a lot of information that I have tried to put together in a very simple breakdown for you. The autonomic nervous system that we have within us, which is really our sympathetic and our parasympathetic, okay? That's what we call our autonomic nervous system. This is deeply intertwined with our gut function. It regulates how well you digest. It regulates how well your body absorbs the nutrients. It is going to ultimately explain to you and show you how you're responding to your food. So don't ignore those signs. This is going to directly shape the communication between your brain and your gut. So, because of all those factors, if you're constantly stressed, then your gut health is going to suffer. But if you are activating that parasympathetic nervous system as much as you can in the times when you need to, then you're going to see your mental clarity rise. You're going to have your mood and your energy go up, and you're going to win at life and making sure that you reach that level of peak health that you're looking for. All right. So hopefully this all makes sense to you. Hopefully you've been taking notes along the way. I hope you have enjoyed today's class on the gut brain connection. This is one of the most important classes that you will be learning, because as adults, a lot of us walk around not understanding how our food is actually impacting our health and our brain and making us feel. So the next time you have a meal that is maybe too large, or you've eaten too fast and you feel very unhappy and sluggish and tired and bloated afterwards, and you're wondering why are you frustrated or a bit agitated and you're not in a good mood, now you know why. Okay, it's highly interconnected, and I hope you guys take the time over the next 10 days or so to really focus on improving the connection and relationship between your gut and your brain, and start to see some amazing changes being reflected in your lives. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's class. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have an amazing evening ahead. If anyone has any questions, feel free to write them to us on Facebook. Stay engaged, and I'll see you in the next class. Bye, guys.